Okay, one of the next things I'd like us to see is we've gotten some information that we put in the script. We've gotten some information that we got from the user, and then just kind of spat back out to the user here at the terminal. I'd also like to see what would it look like to write information, take some information and put it in a file as well. So why don't we go ahead and try something like that? Let's get back into our script. And why don't we take a look at something like, what if I want to take the message the user typed and like save a copy, almost like creating an output file or a log file, something like that. So I won't just say it to the user here on the screen. I'll also make a copy of it and put it in a file somewhere. So we definitely have done things previously where you echoed out some message or you catted out some data, and then using the redirects, using your greater than sign, you could take the information and send it to some file somewhere else. Sure. So why don't we try that with our individual data here? And so in other words, we could have something like this where remember I have an echo $MSG2. That could be what this message is. And if I wanted to have the actual like tag to go along with it, I could have a little bit of the user typed, sure, something like this, just so then there's a little context to whatever that value is, the user typed. But the point is I've got an echo statement. Sure, we've done this before. And now I want to take this data and I want to redirect it to some output file. So maybe I'll call that like output.txt. Sure. And of course, you could use 1 if you want to overwrite the file, or use 2 if you wanted to append. It doesn't matter if you wanted to, run this script multiple times. You could have it just append on to the end of the file. But the idea is you could have writing happen from your script as well, and that will write information to whatever file that it is that you've put in this file path. And so, sure, why don't we go ahead and try that? Let's save this and try this again and see if we can get our script to actually create a brand new file. So sure, I'll say Control X, Y, enter. I'll save this one. Again, do my /myfirstscript.sh. Spits out my hello world. Maybe I'll say hello sandbox as my message. And then it says your second message was hello sandbox. And now the new magic part I want to make sure happened. If I do an ls, I've got an output.txt file. And does it actually contain my message? Cat out my output.txt, and we'll see, yes, the user typed hello sandbox. And so taking output from your scripts and saving it off to files, definitely something that we could do, sure. Let's start to see a couple little gotchas though with what I've got. We got to remember, where is the script executing from and where are we when we're running this? And so let's try to see some of the nuance of this. And this is definitely a good thing to realize right at the front, right when we're learning scripting. And so let's do this. Let's move our script. I'm going to move my script to my documents folder. So I'll do this. I'll do a move mv my first script to documents. So now the script is not in the directory where I currently am. And so the question here is, can I still run the script from here? Can I run scripts not in the directory that I currently am in? And so this is where the internet and a lot of people that are kind of just learning by reading websites get really tripped up, because they say, how do you execute a script? Oh, you type // and then the name of the script, and that's how you run the scripts. Remember, // means the file path. And so that doesn't work. And so people think, well, I have to CD to that location in order to do the // And well, that's not really true either. Remember, you just have to call the file path to where the script actually is, and then you can execute it. And so I can do these /home/sandbox/ well, now it's in my documents folder. And of course, it's called the my first script. That's the command that I'm trying to execute. That's where it is. And so when I hit enter on that, it does run the script from the home directory, even though the script isn't in here. Enter your second message. And my second message could be file paths. Yeah, we want to pay attention to file paths. And it even had the right message in there, right? We had the redirect writing this to output. So if I cat out my output.txt, we'll see, yes, this did actually write the data as well. Here's perhaps another little gotcha we want to be real careful with how we've structured our script when dealing with file paths, though, specifically. In other words, CD to where your script actually is now. Let's go into the documents folder. If I CD to documents, this is where my script is actually located. What happens if I execute my script from here? All right. In other words, I do a /myfirstscript.sh. If I execute the script from here, it does work, and I could write running again. And we'll see if you do an ls in your documents, remember this writes an output.txt file, but it writes it to where you executed the script from, because I had a relative reference on output.txt. And so in other words, if I cat out this output.txt in my documents, that's where it had the running again message, as opposed to the one in my home directory, right? I have one in here, an output.txt that's in my home directory. So anytime you're making scripts and you're dealing with file paths, you want to pay extra close attention to, do I care where the user executes the script from? Do I really want to have a relative reference? Do I want to make the output files wherever the user is currently running it from? Or do I have a specific location on the computer where I want this output to go? You don't always know the answer to that. I'm not saying that there's a right or wrong answer. Sometimes you do want the output to go wherever the user is executing things from. Just put it in their current directory. But other times it's like, no, I want to make sure I put this in a very specific spot. Maybe I should be using absolute references in order to do this. So I'm going to go back to my home directory. I'll cd back to tilde and clean a little bit of this up. I'll move my script back to just after kind of seeing how some of this stuff works, documents, my script, and I'll move it back to here, right? Put dot to say my current location. And maybe I'll delete that extra output.txt file. I don't need these extra ones lying around. So I just have the one that's currently in front of me. And I'll show, like, this is, of course, how we could modify our script slightly. Nano my first script.sh, sure, and say, look, I don't want to have that output.txt being in the current directory. Maybe I want to make sure it's in Sandbox's home directory. That's where this should be written. And maybe to solve this problem, I'll include the knowledge that variables could also be used as file paths. And so it's very common in some of your scripts, you might have something like this, where I'd say path equals, and then set a variable called path to a full file path. Something like /home/sandbox/output.txt, right? And so what this allows you to do, you could imagine if you had multiple things calling this file path, now you don't have to type that full absolute file path like every single time and risk making typos as you're doing this. It definitely can be a lot easier. And this time, instead of redirecting to output.txt, I can just redirect to $path. And so we're now getting a bit of these tricks kind of combined of use the knowledge of variables, save some typing when you have absolute file paths that might start to get a little bit long, just type it once, type it correctly, and knowing, yes, you can redirect to a variable name as well, not just for messages, but of course for files as well. So why don't we save this and run this? Okay, Control X, Y, enter, sure. And this time, just to make sure it's working, I'll cd to a random location before I execute this. I will not execute it from my current location. So maybe I'll go to my pictures folder. I'll cd to pictures, and then I'll run the script from here, right? So I could say /home/sandbox/my first script. Okay, enter my second message, running from pictures. Pictures, sure, just to have it in a different location. And the hope now is, if I check my pictures folder, it did not create an output.txt file here, but rather if I try looking inside my home directory in the actual output.txt over here, it did successfully write the data to the appropriate location. So knowing about file paths as variables and being able to understand redirects and knowing, like, when do I want to have information that's writing to a specific location as opposed to writing to where the user actually is. Like a lot of these little nuanced things, I still find even seasoned people who are really good at writing scripts, they sometimes still trip this up. So this is definitely fundamental things that are really, really useful to know in the long run.